Coming up on Arirang News. After having passed Jeju Island, Typhoon Jongdari is moving up the Korean peninsula, but only to make the heat wave continue after it dissipates on Wednesday afternoon. A North Korean soldier defected to South Korea on Tuesday morning by crossing over the military demarcation line to a county in Gangwon-do province. This is another North Korean defection in less than 2 weeks. The Democratic National Convention kicked off in Chicago on Monday, where Biden passed the torch to Harris after an emotional farewell speech. Meanwhile, the party's recent policy platform has showed that the U.S. will stand by South Korea against North Korean provocations.
Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Kim Bok-hyeong. We start with Typhoon Jongdari, which has approached the Korean peninsula, affecting Jeju Island and the southern regions with heavy rain and strong winds. Some might have expected the typhoon to cool down the country's heat a bit, but it is only expected to worsen it. Lee Soo-jin with the latest.
Concerns about the effects of Typhoon Jongdari, especially on Jeju Island, are growing as it moves north. The Korean Meteorological Administration on Tuesday issued a typhoon advisory for parts of Jeju's coastal waters and its inner southern sea areas and a warning for the outer southern sea areas around the island. The KMA defines a typhoon as having a maximum wind speed at the center of at least 17 meters per second. As of 3 p.m., the maximum wind speed of Typhoon Jongdari is 19 meters per second, which is about 42 miles per hour. All 7 hiking trails on Hallasan Mountain have been restricted and all passenger ferries to and from coastal ports in Jeju after 4 p.m. were cancelled. The island has seen maximum gusts of between 20 and 30 meters per second from Tuesday afternoon, and heavy rain accompanied by thunder and lightning is expected throughout the night. The KMA said on Tuesday that Typhoon Jongdari is expected to pass west of Seogwipo on the south coast of Jeju Island at 6 p.m., which is also when the effects of the storm will start impacting the entire Korean peninsula. And once it reaches Mokpo around midnight, it will be downgraded to a tropical storm and will head across the country towards Sokcho in Gangwon-do province. The typhoon has also raised concerns about the supply of electricity. Not only is the overall electricity demand expected to increase as typhoon brings in hot humid air from the tropical seas, but rain clouds are expected to reduce solar power efficiency. The Honam region in the southern part of Korea is one area that is expected to be particularly affected by the typhoon, and it accounts for 40% of the nation's total solar power capacity. This comes as demand for electricity is extremely high, as Seoul is expecting its first ever month-long consecutive streak of tropical nights as of Tuesday. According to the KMA, Seoul has seen 30 straight days of tropical nights starting July 21st. While the rain is expected to temporarily lower temperatures on Wednesday and Thursday, they will go up again on Friday, with heat waves and tropical nights persisting until the end of the month. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Early this morning, a North Korean soldier crossed the inter-Korean border and expressed their intention to defect. This comes only 12 days after another North Korean defected to the south by crossing the neutral zone of the Hamgang River estuary. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
A North Korean soldier defected to South Korea on foot early on Tuesday. According to a South Korean military source, the soldier, who is reportedly a staff sergeant, crossed the military demarcation line in the northeastern county of Goseong-gun, Gangwon-do province. Wearing a military uniform, they are believed to have walked south using the road along the east coast. South Korea's military tracked and monitored the individual and conducted an operation to guide them into the south. The individual has been handed over to relevant authorities. The area where the crossover happened, Goseong, is close to where South Korea has been carrying out loudspeaker propaganda broadcasts in retaliation to North Korea's continued trash balloon deliveries. It's also near where North Korean soldiers were recently seen laying mines as part of the regime's efforts to prevent North Koreans from crossing the border.
You could say that the defection shows there's a loophole in North Korea's mine laying.
South Korea's unification ministry said that the number of defections by North Korean soldiers could be an indirect indicator of the conditions faced by the regime soldiers near the border. Tuesday's border crossing comes less than 2 weeks after a North Korean resident defected to South Korea by crossing the maritime border. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
South Korea and the U.S. are currently holding joint air drills involving more than 200 fighter jets. The jets will be flying around the clock for 5 consecutive days, which is equal to around 120 hours of non-stop training. It will also involve a record 2,000 sorties to enhance Seoul and Washington's wartime operational capabilities. This is also the first time that more than one fighter wing from each country is participating in the drill. The training is part of the Ulchi Freedom Shield military exercise, which kicked off on Monday and will last until Friday. The U.S. has announced its approval of the sale to South Korea of Apache attack helicopters and related equipment worth $3.5 billion. The sale still needs to go through Congress for final approval. Tae-yoon has more.
The U.S. Defense Security Cooperation Agency, under the Department of Defense, said in a statement on Monday local time that South Korea requested the purchase of up to 36 AH-64E Apache attack helicopters and 72 related engines. The deal is worth some $3.5 billion or 4.7 trillion Korean won. The announcement came on the first day of the Ulchi Freedom Shield, a major combined military exercise between Seoul and Washington. The DSCA explained that the proposed sale will improve the Republic of Korea's capability to meet current and future threats by providing a credible force capable of deterring adversaries and participating in regional operations. One way for South Korea to purchase U.S. weapons is foreign military sales through the U.S. government, and another is commercial purchase through the private U.S. defense companies. This sale of Apache attack helicopters is classed as foreign military sales and therefore needs approval by the U.S. Congress before it is finalized. South Korea previously purchased 36 AH-64E Apaches and started operating them since January 2017. Cha-yoon-kyung, Arirang News.
The government and the ruling party today announced their key direction for next year's budget proposal. That included sharply increasing support for small businesses and expanding benefits for families with multiple children. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young has the details.
The government and ruling party will focus the 2025 budget on supporting vulnerable groups, boosting economic vitality, and preparing for the future.
As household finances are tight and domestic economic challenges are expected to persist, various physical and financial policy measures need to follow to address these issues.
During a meeting at the National Assembly on Tuesday, senior government officials and the People Power Party agreed to issue a record 5.5 trillion Korean won, or around $4 billion in gift certificates, offering discounts for goods at traditional markets to support small business owners.
We decided to reduce the number of restricted business types eligible for the coupons from the current 40 to 28.
To address the country's low birth rate and aging population, benefits for households with 2 or more children will be expanded. This includes increasing the subsidy for buying electric vehicles to up to 6 million won or $4,500, which is double the current amount. Also, for families with 3 or more children, the discount rate on public transportation passes will be increased up to 50%. In response to growing safety concerns about electric vehicle batteries following recent EV fires, the two sides also agreed to deploy 90,000 EV chargers with fire prevention features and allocate extra funds for purchasing unmanned water cannons and other firefighting equipment. The PPP emphasized that the budget for next year aims to maintain sound financial management while also improving welfare for the socially vulnerable. The government plans to submit the final bill to the National Assembly on September 2nd. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
The Supreme Court of Korea nominated on Tuesday the Seoul High Court presiding judge Kim Bok-hyeong to be the new justice of the Constitutional Court, replacing Justice Lee Eun-hae, who will retire next month. The Supreme Court described Kim as having extensive legal knowledge and skills acquired through nearly 30 years of experience. Kim is a Seoul National University law graduate, and she has sat on the Seoul Central District Court, among others. She will go through a parliamentary hearing before the president's official appointment. Her appointment would keep the number of female justices on the Constitutional Court at 3 out of the total of 9. The Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office has indicted the driver involved in the deadly car crash near Seoul City Hall early last month. A 68-year-old man was taken to trial on Tuesday while under arrest under the act concerning the settlement of traffic accidents. Investigation and forensic data confirmed that he had pressed the accelerator pedal instead of the brake. This contradicts the driver's claims that there was a sudden unintended acceleration of the vehicle and his brakes were malfunctioning. This accident left 9 dead and 5 injured. South Korean health authorities have redesignated Mpox, also known as monkeypox, as an infectious disease that requires border screening. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency on Tuesday announced that those traveling from 8 African nations, including Rwanda and Kenya, experiencing symptoms such as fever, chills, and swollen lymph nodes are required to report to quarantine officials upon arrival. This comes as the World Health Organization official declared Mpox a public health emergency of international concern. The redesignation comes just 8 months after it was lifted in December last year, after health authorities said that the number of Mpox patients was seeing a steady decline. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida may meet with South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol in early September. According to Japanese media outlets citing diplomatic sources on Tuesday, Kishida may visit South Korea for a summit meeting with Yoon as part of efforts to maintain the momentum for cooperation between the two nations in areas such as security. The visit, if it takes place, would come before Japan holds an internal election to choose its new prime minister at the end of September, following Kishida's surprise resignation last Wednesday. Over in the U.S., the Democratic National Convention has officially kicked off a day after releasing its new policy platform that pledged partnership with U.S. allies, including South Korea. Peunji explains.
U.S. Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris made a surprise appearance at the opening night of the party's 4-day national convention on Monday in Chicago. Crowds applauded and cheered as she encouraged attendees to vote and defeat her opponent, Donald Trump.
Let us fight for the ideals we hold dear, and let us always remember, when we fight, we win.
President Joe Biden, who delivered a farewell speech, wiped away tears as he walked onto the stage following his daughter's emotional remarks about him. He endorsed the vice president and her running mate, Tim Walz, saying selecting Harris was the best decision he made in his whole career.
Are we ready to vote for democracy and for America? Let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, President and Vice President of the United States?
A day before the convention kicked off, the Democratic Party released its platform document, outlining its goals and policy priorities. The 92-page paper says the U.S. has and will continue to stand by its allies, especially South Korea, against North Korea's provocations, including its illegal buildup of missile capabilities. But the latest document did not directly mention the United States' pursuit of denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, unlike the version in 2020, when it included a pledge to build a sustained, coordinated diplomatic campaign to advance the longer-term goal of denuclearization. Regarding the matter, South Korea's foreign ministry said the U.S. and the international community are strongly committed to achieving denuclearization, adding that it'll continue to closely work with Washington on North Korean issues, regardless of the election result. Meanwhile, just a few hours before the key speakers took to the stage at the Democratic National Convention, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump visited Pennsylvania, an important swing state that he hopes to win. Speaking to a crowd at a manufacturing facility, he mostly focused on economic messaging, while predicting that it will result in a financial ruin for the country, and Pennsylvania in particular if Harris wins.
I'm here today to deliver a simple message. When I'm back in the White House, America's future will be built right here in Pennsylvania.
In recent polls, Harris has been narrowing the gap with Trump, both on a national scale as well as in battleground states like Pennsylvania, which could determine the result of the election in November. 배은지, Arirang News.
Gold prices are continuing to stay high as traders await indications on the Fed's rate cuts this year. Spot gold leveled out at just over $2,500 per ounce on Tuesday, after surpassing the mark last Friday for the first time and making a standard gold bar worth over $1 million. Gold prices have surged this year on the back of expectations that the Federal Reserve will make its first interest rate cut in September. Investors will be monitoring the Fed's July policy meeting minutes and Chair Jerome Powell's speech at the annual Fed meeting in Jackson Hole. In other news, Ukrainian soldiers are striking deep within Russia's Kursk region as President Zelenskyy speaks of setting up a buffer zone in Russian territory. Yoon-jin has more.
Russia confirmed Monday that Ukraine has attacked and damaged a third bridge located along the Seim River in the Kursk region. Ukraine has yet to comment on the strike, but two bridges were already strategically targeted and destroyed within the past week, with military analysts saying they were part of critical supply lines for Russian troops defending the area. It's been 2 weeks since Ukrainian forces began a shock incursion into Russia's western region, an operation that President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says is achieving Kyiv's objectives, which include wearing down Russian forces and carving out a buffer zone. Zelenskyy added that his troops were unleashing what he described as maximum counteroffensive actions. Russia's emergencies ministry reported that more than 121,000 people had been evacuated from 9 border districts in the Kursk region. Zelenskyy said Monday that while Ukraine's allies have supplied long-range weapons, they have also imposed restrictions prohibiting the use of weapons deep inside Russia. He urged allies to loosen curbs so that the Russian invasion could be halted.
If partners removed all existing restrictions on the use of weapons on Russian territory, we would not need physical entry, particularly into the Kursk region, to protect our Ukrainian citizens in the border area and destroy Russia's potential for aggression. However, for now, we cannot use all the weapons available to us and destroy Russian terrorists where they are.
Such restrictions were put in place to avoid crossing red lines set out by Russian President Vladimir Putin. But Zelenskyy urged allies to be bolder in supporting Kyiv.
We are now experiencing an extremely important ideological shift, namely the entire naive, illusory concept of so-called red lines regarding Russia, which dominated the assessment of the war by some of our partners.
Zelenskyy also said on Monday that Ukraine now controls over 1,250 square kilometers of Russian territory, including 92 settlements. As Ukraine demands a full withdrawal of Russian troops before any sit-down for peace talks, Russian presidential aide Yuri Yushakov said that the latest incursion has pushed the prospect of any such talks further away. Meanwhile, despite the war at home, Russian President Vladimir Putin departed on Monday for a 2-day visit to Baku to uphold Moscow's historic role of mediating peace negotiations between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Yoon-jin, Arirang News.
With the U.S. State Secretary in Tel Aviv, Israel has reportedly agreed to a proposal aimed at bridging the gap over a ceasefire in Gaza. The U.S. is calling on Hamas to do the same. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Israel on Sunday in the hope of getting Israel and Hamas to agree to a ceasefire and hostage release deal. During his visit, Washington's top diplomat also held talks on Monday with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Isaac Herzog. After their sit-down, Blinken said that Israel had agreed to the U.S.-led proposal while calling on Hamas to do the same.
In a very constructive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu today, he confirmed to me that Israel accepts the bridging proposal, that he supports it. It's now incumbent on Hamas to do the same. And then the parties, with the help of the mediators, the United States, Egypt, and Qatar, have to come together and complete the process of reaching clear understandings about how they'll implement the commitments.
Despite Israel's agreement, Blinken said that even if Hamas accepts the deal, a number of complex issues would remain for mediating nations and negotiators to work on, but did not elaborate on what those issues might be. But with past ceasefire deals failing, Israel and Hamas continue to blame each other for the lack of agreement. Hamas on Sunday accused Netanyahu of putting conditions on the deals that only benefit the military in prolonging the aggression in Gaza. However, Netanyahu on the same day stressed that Israel cannot just give and give, hinting that it's not willing to accept conditions put forth by Hamas. Meanwhile, Israel conducted airstrikes targeting a Hezbollah weapons depot inside Lebanon. According to a report by Reuters, citing security sources, the strike did not result in any fatalities. However, Lebanon's health ministry said 8 were injured, including 2 Syrian children. The Israeli military said that it conducted airstrike on a number of Hezbollah weapons storage facilities, adding that with the presence of secondary explosions, large amounts of weapons were destroyed in the attack. The latest airstrike is the second targeting Hezbollah weapons depot in the past 3 days, as the Israeli military targeted another on Saturday, leading to 10 deaths, including 2 children. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The ninth typhoon of the season, Jongdari, is forecast to bring heavy rain and strong winds to the south coast and Jeju Island. Once it reaches waters west of Mokpo at around midnight, it should be downgraded to a tropical depression and continue to head towards Sokcho in Gangwon-do province. Waters of Jeju have been under typhoon alerts, and hot, moist air should pour down on the south coast. And until tomorrow, there could be 100 millimeters of downpours. Meanwhile, the rest of the country will see 5 to 60 millimeters of showers. The capital area will see heavier rain on Wednesday. The typhoon did not bring any heat relief today. It was one searing day. Heat will stay overnight, with the capital forecast to wake up to a new record of 31 tropical nights tomorrow. Highs will be similar or a couple of degrees lower than today, with Seoul getting up to 31 degrees, Busan, Jeju topping out at 32 degrees. This year's heat waves will stay longer with more extreme temperatures, so stay safe. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for today. Thank you for watching. Arirang News will be back at 9 a.m. Korea time.